And this is what it can be summed up for the caregiver who feels lonely, irritated, angry, helpless, frustrated, dejected. You can have any adjectives. I have gone through it in those about last 9 years. It took 3 years to really identify that it's a disease. Even today, it takes 2 to 3 years to really establish. And then these are the stages through which almost every caregiver goes through. And this is a cause of concern. And my next part is basically to help the caregivers to overcome these sort of things, which are natural, which are bound to happen. I wish that none of your friends, relatives suffers from it, but then reality is different than pure wishing. So if something happens, so the remaining slides would act as a guide as to how to go about. Well, you have to change it. Change what? Your attitude, your nazariya. You look into the mirror, you should not be seeing the way you are. And this same thing is best represented by this. A person, to say the least, is stressed, but that is what is not required. What is required is read it backwards. So when stressed is spelled backwards, you know it is deserts. I won't say it's easy to do it, but then this is the only way to do it. Nothing is easy, particularly when your near and dear one is suffering. And the worst part is you see the suffering, you suffer as much as the patient. In fact, you suffer more. Because at a certain stage, patient doesn't know what's happening. Last 3 years, my wife didn't know what was happening, but I knew what was happening to her and to me. So the change of attitude is the only way out. So you must cope with the changing, challenging behavior. Those 20 points which I've said, they are really challenging behavior. It is how you do what you do that makes a difference to your life, because at that stage, the life of the patient, you just can't control. There is no cure. The patient is going down the drain day by day. It is your life you have to take care of, because only then you will be able to look after the patient. Many close people have asked me, those who are there, Sabby, you've done a great job. I said, no, tell me one thing. I asked a very simple question. Did I have a choice? I didn't have a choice. I couldn't have thrown her out anywhere. I had to look after her. The question is how you look after. So today, 6 years after her demise, when I'm sitting and talking to the people, I've given more than 200 talks, sharing my experiences, my frustrations, my bad times, is basically because I had decided that I have to do it effectively to maintain my sanity. So there are 5 things I'd like to say coping with challenging behaviors, which I mentioned. The very first is accept the reality. My book, the first chapter of that book is Overcome the Guilt Feeling. Every caregiver goes through a guilt. Did I miss out? Did I do this? Why it happened? Was it because of me? Well, nobody can say it could have been due to that, because nobody in his senses does anything wrong, doesn't want parent or the spouse to suffer. It just happened. It's happened. It's like any other disease which happens. So if it's hit your colleague, your partner, your parent, just accept the reality. Nothing can be undone now. Rather than spending your energy on these frustrations and all that, just accept it so that you don't have stress on this part. Accepting the reality is the first thing that prepares you to move to the next step. It requires a lot of patience, lots and lots of patience. Because what a person does, you can't imagine why he or she is doing. Is she or he doing it on purpose? What is wrong? Are they testing? First 3 years, I kept on blaming her. Why are you doing it? You are sensible. She was postgraduate teaching in a public school. She was teaching yoga to about 100 ladies and children of Jalvayu Bihar. She was an excellent cook. She was a gardener. She was absolutely superb, a homemaker. But you know, ultimately, everybody used to say a patient behaves like a child. Well, it is more than that because child every year becomes better and better in behavior. But in this case, every year it becomes worse and worse. And when the disease started, she was 52, I was 54. 10 years down the line, I was 64. No more that much energetic to do much more demands of us. So, patience, that helps you control your frustration. Empathy, it is different than sympathy. A stage goes when you sympathize, oh my God, she can't do anything and all that. No, sympathy doesn't work. It's empathy. Because now you are going to deal with a person who is no more the person you have known. We had lived 30 odd years, 17 Air Force postings together beautifully. And then suddenly something happens. Now I'm living with a person whom I haven't known for 30 years. And over here, I realized, and I put 5 posters in my drawing room, dining room, corridor, kitchen, saying 6 words. She is not doing on purpose. I had to tell myself she is not doing on purpose. She just didn't know what was happening. So I had to accept what she was doing was her normal behavior. That controlled a lot of irritation in me. I became a relatively calmer person. Fourth, count your blessings. Every 2 months, something new happens. Something worse than the earlier thing happens. You know, down the drain, it's a long, long tunnel, and you're sure at the end of the tunnel there is no light, right? But still, how do you cope up with these things? So I devised my own method, count your blessings. In between all these things, something good happens. Say, oh my God, this has happened. She was bedridden. For weeks, she would smile. The day she would smile, I'll come and tell my children, oh my God, today I got a lottery. She smiled. She fell down, broke her hip bone. And my first reaction was, oh, thank God. My son called my elder son, who was away in Hyderabad. He says, I think Papa is gone off the rocker. He said, what happened? He said, Mama is broken the hip. And he says, so thank God. So son asked me, Papa, are you all right? I said, yes. He said, did you say this? I said, yes. He said, what do you mean? I said, thank God she hasn't broken her spine. Hip can be replaced, spine cannot be replaced. So when you have that attitude, something worse could have happened. So something happens, you accept it. Then you're not cursing yourself or God or anybody. And once you don't curse, you know, it brings in a bit of a mental peace, additional mental peace. And the fifth part, self before others. All of you would have traveled by air, you know, they give. In case of loss of pressurization, the mask will fall from there. And what is it? First, you put the mask onto your face and then only to the elder or a child who is next to you. Same thing happens. When the things are going bad, I had first a physical depression and then a mental breakdown. Physically, I stopped breathing. I was taken to a hospital. I was put on a mask, oxygen for about 6 hours. When I came to my senses, I realized where I am. And on the hospital bed, I realized, I said, Sabi, you can't die before her. You have to outlive her. So this is self before others. You got to look after yourself. That determination. And what to look after is in my next slide. Okay, I'll come after this. Now, this happens to an Alzheimer patient. On the left is absolutely brainy, my wife for first 32 years up to 52 years of age. And then the brain started withering away. And the last slide is what happens. Few things are still there, but it absolutely becomes barren. You have to ensure that it doesn't happen to you. Because one Alzheimer patient requires minimum 2 caregivers. You look after yourself, make sure that you are not dependent on others. Now, looking after the caregiver, make sure you don't have a nervous or physical breakdown. Take a break. Very, very important. I learned it the hard way. Every day, go out for 1 hour. Leave the patient as it is. Nothing will happen to the patient. But when you come back, your mental batteries will be charged up. You will be fresh to go through the remaining 23 hours of a day in a nice fashion. When things are really bad, I started going for 2 hours of lecture in aerospace engineering college. Used to go and teach jet engines, come back totally fresh. I used to forget what had happened over the previous day, get ready for the next day. Talk it out. Very, very important. Nobody can help you, neither the doctors nor anybody. The disease of the patient will remain. But compare yourself with a pressure cooker. What happens when the steam is built up? If the steam is not let out, the cooker will burst. And that is what happens to the Alzheimer caregivers. Talk it out, your frustrations, your anger, your depression. Share it out with your friend, your colleague, your spouse, your mother, your father, whomsoever you can. Don't expect anything, but you're letting the steam out because you'll be again ready. The steam will again build up. So keep on doing this exercise regularly. If you don't do it, you'll have a nervous breakdown. Like I had it before I came to know how to handle it. And third, let out a cry. There are times when while talking it out, I burst out crying. First time I felt very bad. Second time I felt relieved. And third time I started looking for an excuse to cry out and let out the anger and frustration and all that. There's nothing wrong. God has created tears and given you eyes also. Don't hold it back. These are the practical tips to maintain the sanity. One has to look after a physical health. Like I said, go out for a walk, go for a walk, go for something. Just don't be tied up in the home. You'll have lot many other problems. So physical health, everybody understands. Mental health, I said, talk it out, cry it out, share with others. Don't build up the pressures. Yes, you have to plan for financial health because keeping at home, you may have to keep a caregiver cost about 25, 30, 40,000 rupees per month if it's 8 hours or 16 hours or something. And if it goes to 24/7 care center, that costs about 50,000 rupees. So a stage may come when financial planning, financial health has to be looked into. Many people seek spiritual outcome from this. Those who are religious minded, read Gita, Gita, Bhagavad, do something. I have known many people who get a relief by following spiritual health. But what I suggest is very, very important is a social health. This is a time when I was going through the disease. I shifted from Chandigarh to Bangalore because my son was here. Initially, I had plenty of friends. First 2, 3 years, 15, 20 people coming. As the disease started increasing, the contact started diminishing. There was a stage I couldn't have anybody because I couldn't visit anybody's house, and anybody visiting used to feel embarrassed. Well, do not let that happen. Build up, create a social circle. Your social health is most important out of these five for a caregiver. Remember, you are not alone. I have not told numbers. There are 10 million people registered. There are equal number who are not registered. The number is going to double up in the next 10 years because longevity is going to go up. At independence, the normal age was 37, 38. Today is already 74, number one. Earlier, there were joint families. So somebody suffering from Alzheimer's, could be accommodated in the hand. There were 8-10 members, chacha, chachi, taya, tai, etc., etc. But today, children are out, so husband, wife left alone. But then you are not alone. There are all around people. So get connected with everybody and join support groups. There are support groups. We have got a Alzheimer's caregivers group, all India group. About 90 people are there. Caregivers. They put up their problems. Somebody has gone through a similar thing. So when somebody puts up, this is happening to my wife, my father, my mother, my sister, people suggest this is what I went through, this is how it can be done. So joining a support group is very, very essential.
हमें उम्मीद है कि आपको यह वीडियो अच्छा लगा। हम बहुत रेगुलरली मनी मैटर्स, हेल्थ और एंटरटेनमेंट पर सीनियर सिटीजन्स के लिए एक्सक्लूसिव वीडियोस रिलीज करते हैं। यदि आप हमारे नए वीडियोस को मिस नहीं करना चाहते तो नीचे दिए गए सब्सक्राइब बटन पर क्लिक करें।